I knew moving into Oakridge Estates meant dealing with a homeowners association, but I wasn't prepared for Barbara Winters, or, as the neighbors not so affectionately called her, the HOA Karen. Barbara had been the president of our HOA for over 5 years, and she ruled this quiet little suburb with a combination of passive-aggressive charm and a constantly evolving rule book. It often felt like the rules changed whenever she had a new personal grudge to settle. I met Barbara just 3 days after moving in. I hadn't even finished unpacking when I heard a sharp, deliberate knock on the front door. Standing outside was a woman in her late 50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair, a string of pearls around her neck, and a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Welcome to Oakridge Estates," she said, her voice syrupy sweet in a way that immediately raised my guard. "I'm Barbara Winters, president of the Homeowners Association. I notice your trash bins are still visible from the street." She didn't wait for a response before continuing. "According to Community Guidelines, Section 4, Paragraph 3, all bins must be stored out of sight within 24 hours of collection." I apologized, explaining I was still getting settled and hadn't had the chance to move them yet. Instead of acknowledging that, she pulled out a freshly printed copy of the HOA rulebook, all 78 pages, and handed it to me. Along with it came a bright yellow courtesy notice that looked more like a parking ticket. "Just so we start off on the right foot," she said, her tight smile never wavering. "We take great pride in our neighborhood standards. It protects everyone's property values." That was my official welcome to life under Barbara's rule. Over the next few months, I received a steady stream of these courtesy notices. One for grass that was supposedly half an inch too tall. Another for leaving my garage door open for more than 15 minutes while unloading groceries. It was relentless but manageable until I bought my electric car. The Tesla Model 3 was a personal milestone. I had just been promoted at my architectural firm, and this was my way of celebrating sleek, silver, and environmentally conscious. I went through all the proper channels to install a charger in my garage, submitted the plans, got HOA approval, and hired a licensed electrician. Everything was above board, but I quickly learned Barbara had a strange aversion to electric vehicles. At the next HOA meeting, she introduced a proposed amendment to ban unsightly charging equipment and required all vehicles parked in driveways to fit with the community's aesthetic. When someone asked her to clarify, she glanced at me and said flatly, "Traditional vehicles, not these futuristic science projects." The proposal was ultimately rejected. Even some of her usual supporters thought it went too far. Several neighbors also drove hybrids or EVs, and no one wanted to be told what kind of car they could own. After the meeting, Barbara approached me. Her voice was quiet but sharp. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she said through a strained smile, turning my own board against me. "I'm just living here, Barbara, following the same rules as everyone else," I said, trying to keep the peace. "We'll see about that," she replied coldly before walking away. The next morning, I had a strange feeling in my gut as I walked out to my driveway. My Tesla was parked outside. I'd left it there while my garage was being used for a DIY project. And something didn't feel right. I was in the middle of a home project, using the garage as a workspace. So my Tesla was parked in the driveway overnight. As I walked up to it the next morning, my stomach dropped. A deep, jagged scratch ran along the driver's side, from front to back, cutting through the paint like a scar. Tucked under the windshield wiper was a note, "Gas guzzlers only. Take your eyesore elsewhere." I was furious, but more than that, I was calculating. I didn't have direct proof of who did it, but let's just say I had a very strong suspicion. What Barbara didn't know was that I'd installed a dashcam system shortly after buying the Tesla, one that automatically activated when it detected movement nearby. I rushed to check the footage, and there she was, clear as day, in full high definition. Barbara Winters, creeping up to my car at exactly 3:13 a.m. She wasn't wearing her usual polished outfit this time, just a dark tracksuit, with her hair tucked under a baseball cap, but her face was unmistakable. She looked around cautiously, placed a note under the wiper, and then, with a look of smug satisfaction, pulled out a set of keys. She dragged them across the side of my car, not once, but twice, clearly making sure the damage was noticeable. I watched the footage 3 times, just to be certain. It was all there. Her face, her actions, and even the self-satisfied glance she gave before walking back down the street toward her house. My hands were shaking, part anger, part adrenaline. After months of enduring her petty notices and targeted harassment, I finally had undeniable proof of who she really was. I didn't go knocking on her door. I knew better than that. Instead, I handled it calmly, first calling my insurance company to report the damage and sending them the video. Then I called a non-emergency police line and filed a report. The estimate for the repair came in at over $2,000, which meant felony-level vandalism under state law. When Officer Rodriguez arrived, I played the dashcam footage for him. He watched silently, his eyebrows rising as the clip played. "You're sure this is your HOA president?" he asked, looking genuinely taken aback. "Positive," I said. "She's been trying to push anti-EV rules. We had a number of run-ins." He took notes, made a copy of the footage, and nodded. "This is clearly intentional. And given the amount of damage, it's a serious charge. We'll need to speak with Ms. Winters." I asked if I could be there when they talked to her. Officer Rodriguez shook his head. "Better to let us handle it professionally. If you're present, it could escalate." I agreed, albeit reluctantly. As the patrol car drove away, I couldn't help but imagine how Barbara would react when the police showed up at her pristine colonial house, the one with the perfectly trimmed hedges and the HOA flag out front. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, my phone lit up with texts from neighbors. Apparently, Barbara had been escorted to a police car in broad daylight. No handcuffs, but plenty of flustered protesting. She tried to deny everything until the officers mentioned the video. That's when, according to one neighbor, her confidence evaporated. The following morning, I got a call from Detective Simmons. Barbara had officially been charged with criminal mischief. Her arraignment was scheduled for the following week. "She's been released on her own recognizance," the detective said, "but she's been advised not to contact you directly." That advice didn't stop Barbara from sending a message the very next day. Not through her, but through her husband, Greg, a quiet man who always looked more tired than present. That evening, there was a knock at my door. It wasn't Barbara. It was her husband, Greg. He stood there looking uncomfortable, his shoulders slightly hunched, fidgeting with his wedding ring. "Look," he began, "Barbara made a terrible mistake. She's under a lot of pressure with the HOA, and sometimes she gets carried away." He sighed, searching for the right words. "We'd like to cover the full cost of the damage, and anything else this has caused. In return, we were hoping maybe you consider dropping the charges." I appreciated the calm tone, and I could tell this wasn't easy for him. But I stood my ground. "I understand the offer, Greg, and I do appreciate it. But this isn't just about the damage to my car. Barbara has been targeting people in this neighborhood for a long time, using her position to harass and intimidate. This can't keep happening. Actions have consequences." Greg nodded, a resigned look crossing his face. "I figured you'd say that," he said quietly. "Honestly, I've been telling her for years she takes this HOA stuff too seriously. Maybe this will finally be the wake-up call she needs." 2 days later, an emergency HOA board meeting was held. The room was full. Neighbors who'd mostly kept their heads down until now showed up in force. Barbara was notably absent. The vice president, Walter, a retired judge with a calm but commanding presence, stood at the front. "In light of recent events involving our HOA president, which many of you are now aware of, we are calling an emergency vote regarding her position," he said. "According to our bylaws, any board member who engages in illegal activity affecting the community may be removed by a 2/3 majority vote." The vote wasn't even close. Barbara was removed unanimously. One by one, homeowners stood up and shared their stories, quiet but simmering grievances that had built up over the years, unreasonable citations, intimidation, and cherry-picked enforcement of rules. It seemed my experience had been the tipping point. As the meeting wrapped up, Walter approached me personally. "We've also voted to issue you a formal apology on behalf of the HOA," he said. "We'll cover your insurance deductible and any out-of-pocket expenses related to the incident. Barbara acted alone, but we, the board, failed to put proper checks on her power. And for that, we're truly sorry. I nodded, accepting the apology. There was no joy in it, but there was relief, vindication. As I walked out into the parking lot, I spotted a familiar car parked a short distance away. Barbara was sitting behind the wheel, watching through the windshield. She hadn't come inside, but she'd clearly been waiting, maybe hoping for a different outcome. Our eyes met. Her expression was a strange mix of anger and disbelief. The carefully polished image she'd worked so hard to maintain was cracking. Just then, her phone rang. I saw her pick it up. A moment later, her face shifted. Her mouth parted slightly, then tightened. Though I couldn't hear the words, I didn't need to. Later, I'd find out the call was from her employer, a local real estate agency where she worked as an office manager. The story had made local news. HOA president charged with vandalism of electric vehicle. It mentioned her name and her role in the community. Her company, which had recently made a big public push around sustainability and ethical practices, had placed her on unpaid leave pending an internal investigation. As I walked toward my now-repaired Tesla, I glanced back one last time. Barbara was slumped forward over the steering wheel, her shoulders shaking, maybe crying, maybe just overwhelmed by the sudden collapse of everything she thought made her important. After years of imposing rules on others, she'd finally learned the most important one of all. No one, not even the HOA president, is above the rules.